Hello and welcome back to the channel. My name is Eddie Jennings from EJSLLC.com. In this video, I'm going to give my impressions of the T-Mobile home internet service, but before I dive in, I want to thank returning subscribers for watching another video and encourage you, if you haven't subscribed yet, to click the subscribe button and ring the bell when you do so you can be notified of when new content comes available. And if you enjoyed the video, make sure you click like. So where I am in rural northeast Georgia in the United States, there are not many options for ISPs. As a matter of fact, the monopoly telco that's here has been a monopoly for at least 40 years and probably has been the monopoly for a little bit longer than that. So when I moved to where I am, the pretty much only option that I had for any type of broadband internet access was 3 megabits DSL, which for me that was pretty much an unusable connection since I'm a system administrator that primarily works from home and I'm on the internet a good bit. And also if I'm making content like this, needing to, upload it to YouTube and the like, that internet connection simply is not a useful thing. The upload speed, if I remember correctly, was something about maybe 0.5 megabits up, if I recall. So for me, an unusable connection. Now it's better than nothing. If you were a person that all you had was dial up here, which I know in this area for many years that was it, DSL is significantly better. Now this telco does offer some pretty decent speeds and such, but for where I am and the distance I am from a CO location or central office location, those options simply aren't available. There was an option for me getting a DIA circuit or a dedicated internet access circuit, but that was several $1,000s with construction, and I think the cheapest monthly rate was several $100s for a 200 megabits connection. So for residential service, the telco really could not offer me anything that would be useful. However, I do have T-Mobile home internet available to me where I am, and this particular product that I'm talking about is their like $50 a month unlimited data thing. And so far I have been fairly pleased with it, and I'm going to go over some of the pros and cons of it. So if you're in an area where that's an ISP option for you, maybe this can help you with your decision on whether or not to take the plunge with it. So the pros of T-Mobile's home internet service. First of all, the speeds. Again, I'm comparing this against the 3 megabits DSL that I was able to have, and my download speeds tend to be between 80 and 100 megabits per second. I've got up to like 120 megabits per second, and the couple times I've had the service be degraded for whatever reason, the degraded speeds tend to be between 20 and 50 megabits per second. So significantly better than a 3 megabits per second download. And I'll talk about when I've had service degradations a little bit later. It is not something that happens commonly, so I've been very pleased with the download speeds of it. Upload speeds tend to be between 20 and 30 megabits per second or so. So it's not a symmetrical connection, but for residential internet access, I would not expect a symmetrical connection. It would be nice to have, but that's just simply not how it works. And I can understand why to an extent. Most of your customers are going to be downloading stuff rather than uploading, but still, it is much better than the probably half a megabit per second upload speed that I would have with 3 megabits DSL. Another positive aspect of the service is the reliability. There have only been a few times in the last 8 or 9 months, which I'm pretty sure 8 or 9 months is about how long I've had the service, where their service has been degraded to the point that it's not usable. And I would find that acceptable for a residential internet connection. And when I've had some issues with it, it's typically been resolved over a day or so. So it's not something that has left me without any type of internet access. Also, the couple times where the service has been degraded but not completely out, the service was still significantly better than 3 megabits DSL. As I mentioned, I think the last time it actually was degraded but not out, I had 20 to 40 megabits per second download speed and about half that for upload speed, which is still significantly better than DSL. The last positive thing I want to talk about is their support. And granted, I have not spoken with humans too much on the support end, but rather I have used support via Twitter. I basically do a direct message to their T-Mobile support, and usually get a response between 30 minutes to an hour. Now, typically the support is just, restart your device that they give you, which is a cellular modem / router / wireless access point, or sometimes they will have you power off the device for several minutes while they do a reset of your connection to whatever tower that you are connected to. And again, for residential internet, I find that acceptable. I'm not expecting to deal with senior network engineers for this, and especially since the device itself, which I'll go into a little bit later, is not something that's user configurable or has significant logging and such. There's limited real troubleshooting that can go on with the service. But so far, if they've had to reset the service, that typically will solve problems. But the thing I'm impressed by is the fact that there is, somewhat of a decent response time with an asynchronous communication medium like Twitter. So now for the cons. The cons really are more nitpicky things that I have as an IT professional and a person that knows about networking and a person that wants to have total control over my network at all times. They aren't necessarily cons that would keep me away from the service, especially if your alternative is something like what I had, which was the 3 megabits DSL. But that being said, I think it's important for people to know about them when they're deciding whether or not to use this particular ISP. First would be the fact that the network device that you're sent by T-Mobile is this little all-in-one thing that, or at least the device that I have. I don't know if, a year later they're sending different devices, but it's a cellular modem, a router, and a wireless access point all in one device. Now, for probably your average user of residential internet, that's perfectly fine. Plug it in. I think I had to use their little T-Mobile app on my phone to do some type of initialization kind of thing. But basically, you plug it in and just stuff works, which for most users is going to be great. The problem, or at least for me, is the fact that there is no configurability with it. I can't control DHCP. I can't control DNS. There's no type of port forwarding available or anything. And that for me is a problem, especially the DNS DHCP piece, because I like having control of that. So my solution there was I actually have the T-Mobile device connected to my Ubiquiti Edge router. And so therefore I have, control over my network as far as DNS, DHCP, and the like. The problem there is that introduces another NAT hop, whereas, I have network address translation, obviously from my T-Mobile device to the rest of the internet, and then putting my router in front of it, I have network address translation there. I haven't noticed that to be a significant problem with performance or anything. The real problem that you would get into is if you were to try to host some type of service, then you have another layer of NAT to go through. But for most of your residential folks, I don't see them wanting to host their own thing. Now, the other thing with their box, I believe on the T-Mobile side, it talks about it's limited to 60-something devices, which should be plenty for a residential connection. Mine is actually connected, again, to my router, which is connected to a switch, and then all the other devices on my home are connected to it. So I'm not sure if I could actually get past the 60 device limit, but I obviously haven't tried, and I think for most residential customers, that's not going to be an issue. The other thing which can affect performance is the way T-Mobile's network is set up. They are using an all IPv6 network, which is generally a great thing. We've been here, at least for me, I've been hearing for the last 20-something years that IPv6 is coming and we all need to have it. But unfortunately, it's not, well, it is here, but it's not, ubiquitous yet. And maybe in my lifetime it will be. But the challenge with T-Mobile's network being all IPv6 is the way they have to handle traffic for IPv4. So basically what happens is your network at your home is probably IPv4. There is a network translation from IPv4 to IPv6 as your traffic goes on to T-Mobile's network. And then if the destination of the traffic is to an IPv4 only site, then there's another translation from IPv6 back to IPv4, and then your traffic goes to your site, and then of course traffic comes back, and there's a couple of translation layers. That in itself is not a problem, and it's actually kind of an interesting way to handle the issue of not having enough IPv4 addresses. The issue comes into sometimes your IPv4 address that you get on that last leg of the translation tends to change very rapidly. Now, this is not uncommon for residential internet connections because usually you're getting your publicly routable IPv4 address from your ISP via the DHCP protocol. And so, it's going to change. Your lease for that DHCP address will be anywhere from a day to several days. I think I've seen leases last as long as a week for residential connections, but DHCP typically does not change as often as this 4 to 6 to 4 translation. And it makes sense why it could change because, I'm sure T-Mobile has a limited pool of IPv4 addresses to do that last translation leg from 6 to 4. And each time you make an outbound connection to the internet, you're going through that translation. And so it is entirely possible that you'll get another address in the pool. And quite frankly, I'm actually surprised that when my IPv4, or rather the publicly seen IPv4 address, is stable, notice not static, but stable, I'm kind of surprised that it's even able to do that, because I would think each connection that's going out is going to get a new address, but for whatever reason it's often stable. But when it isn't, it may break some websites, and in particular my own Mesh Central website that I have for the LLC for when I'm doing remote access and support for folks will break if I'm in that mode of rapidly changing IPv4 addresses. It also ended up breaking my parents' banking or online banking website that they use. And so my solution for this was to set up a WireGuard VPN, which I'll do some videos about in the future. That's how I've worked around the issue of potentially having rapidly changing IPv4 addresses. I have contacted T-Mobile a couple of times about it, and typically what they do is the normal, they'll reset your connection for you, and that usually will solve the issue. But again, for the vast majority of websites that I consume, and I would think a lot of residential customers will consume, such as YouTube and things like that, if you're in the situation where your IPv4 address is changing rapidly, it doesn't really cause problems. But just note that can be a thing. But again, when you think about your alternative, which is a nearly unusable 3 megabits connection, it's not the absolute end of the world, especially if there's ways to work around it. So the last point I want to mention in my review is availability of T-Mobile's home internet service. Now, right now, if I were to put my address into their, are you eligible for service? Everything looks fine. But that was not the case when I first established the service. And I've been a Metro by T-Mobile, or actually still think of it as Metro PCS cell phone customer for years. And I also have a mobile access point from Metro by T-Mobile, which I used when I moved to my current location in Northeast Georgia to get around having to just have 3 megabits DSL when I was doing my work. And both of those obviously run on T-Mobile's network. Now, I could see why there could be some technical limitations that you could have these services but not have the home internet, but I figured it would be worth calling. And it was worth calling, because when I actually spoke with the representative, despite their site saying that, T-Mobile home internet service is not available to me, in fact, it was available to me and I was able to start service. So if you're in a situation where you'd want to try this internet service and it's telling you that your address doesn't work, I would encourage calling them anyway, because you might be pleasantly surprised with it. So overall, I've been pleased with the internet service, especially considering the alternatives that I have for residential service where I am in rural Georgia. I know the question will come up of what about Starlink? Well, I've been on the Starlink waiting list for now a year and a half, and so I highly doubt that's going to happen. But the T-Mobile stuff was available. I didn't mention this before, but latency has not been bad. I think I'm between 30 and 50 milliseconds for latency to most sites, which, not awesome, but not terrible either. So if you're considering it, I would encourage you to take the plunge. I've been pleased with it. The price point is good. There are some cons, but they're more kind of technical in nature and not necessarily breaking of the service. So if you found this video useful, make sure you do click like and feel free to share it with others. Clicking like and sharing the videos helps the channel and also just helps get the information to other folks. I again want to thank returning subscribers for watching another video. If you are watching and haven't subscribed, do click that subscribe button and ring the bell, and I will see you the next time.